Hi, everyone. My name is Marc Bates, and you've reached the Rabbit Room Apologetics podcast. Thanks for joining us. This episode is entitled Grace and Truth in the Digital Areopagus, a case study in apologetics, allegory, and the promised plan. So let's get into it. Most of us have encountered the popular internet myth that the Bible is essentially a collection of hidden codes and fictional allegories designed by competing factions. Today, countless skeptics and even some believers assume that the early church was a bitter political battleground where the Apostle Paul hijacked the religion of Jesus, acting as a false prophet who betrayed the original covenant. According to this widely accepted theory, the gospel writers were actually enemies of Paul, and they supposedly embedded secret messages in their texts to warn readers about his law-free deception. We are told that the historical events of the Gospels, such as the crucifixion, are not concrete historical realities, but merely Hellenistic allegories meant to teach a deeper spiritual truth. But there is a massive historical glitch that completely shatters this myth of a fractured allegorical Bible. When you strip away the later imposition of Greco-Roman philosophy, specifically Platonic dualism, and remove our modern Western demand for analytical logic, this entire house of cards collapses. If we step back into the ancient Hebraic cognitive environment and read the text through the singular unfolding promised plan of God, we discover that the New Testament writers were not competing sectarian rivals. They were unified authors recording the literal, supernatural climax of the Creator's covenantal history. Let us systematically break down this old belief, starting with the idea that the Gospels are just fictional allegories. Modern critics often claim that the names of people in the Gospels, like Joseph Arimathea or Simon of Cyrene, were intentionally fabricated by the authors because their meanings conveniently fit the story. But historical data from ancient ossuaries and first-century documents definitively prove that these names perfectly match the exact naming conventions and frequencies of first-century Palestine. The fact that a name carries profound theological meaning does not negate its historical reality, because the sovereign Creator actively orchestrates real historical events to serve as signs of his redemptive purpose. Next, we must dismantle the myth that Paul was a ravenous wolf who abandoned the Torah to invent a new Gentile religion. Paul never ceased being a Torah-observant Pharisee, and he explicitly argued that faith in the Jewish Messiah does not abolish the law, but actually establishes it. And that we'll find in Romans 3:31. Do we then overthrow the law by this faith? By no means. On the contrary, we uphold the law. Right? So when Paul argued that non-Jewish believers did not need to undergo ritual proselyte circumcision to be saved, he was not betraying the covenant. He was operating on the profound Old Testament precedent of Naaman the Syrian, an outsider who was welcomed into faith without being forced to become an ethnic Jew. And you'll see that, for example, in 2 Kings 5:17. Okay? This is after Naaman has encountered Elisha, has dipped himself into Jordan, has gotten his leprosy cured. Then Naaman said, and he asked to pay Elisha. Elisha said, no, you don't need to pay me. Then Naaman said, if not, please let there be given to your servant 2 mule loads of earth. From now on, your servant will not offer burnt offering or sacrifice to any god but the Lord. Okay? Finally, critics point to the Messianic secret, the moments when Jesus told people to hide his identity, as proof of a political conspiracy or a literary code, but they are completely missing the supernatural architecture of the ancient worldview. Jesus veiled his identity for a brilliant strategic reason: cosmic espionage. And we can see that in 1 Corinthians 2:8. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. This is where Paul's saying that none of the rebellious Elohim understood that Christ had to die on the cross for mankind to be saved and to ultimately be elevated higher than the angels, right? If the rebellious divine beings had known the Creator's promised plan, they would never have orchestrated the crucifixion, thereby sealing their own doom. Okay. So, what is the new reality and the payoff beat for your faith today? The Bible is not a Hellenistic underground railroad of competing theologies and hidden allegories. It is the historical, unified, and unfolding promised plan of God designed to reclaim a physical cosmic temple. Understanding this Hebraic unity completely transforms how we handle apologetics in the digital age. When we encounter people online who hold these fractured, skeptical theories, we do not need to respond with ad hominem attacks or tribalism. Instead, we can model the biblical mandate to engage with gentleness and reverence, building empathetic bridges while firmly correcting textual errors. And that would be in 1 Peter, right? 3:15. But in your hearts, honor Christ and the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. Truth is most effectively received when it's delivered through a medium of relational respect. By combining scholarly precision with pastoral grace, we can invite skeptics out of their confusion and into the living, progressive reality of God's single redemptive purpose. All right, hope you like that. Remember, as always, this is just a quick summary of an article you'll find on my Substack. Here's the Substack article. There is also a short little 2-minute video or less that is like an introduction, and then I do have the podcast, which is actually the article being read to you so that you can listen to it with that maybe when you're walking or in the car, or if you're just sitting and don't want to pull out your computer to read it on the Substack page. We've got that, of course, the Substack itself. The article is complete. It has citations. I've documented where all my sources are so you can double check me. So think about that and look at that. The link will be in the description. So if you want to continue stripping away modern philosophical myths and recovering the ancient supernatural architecture of the scriptures, make sure you hit that subscribe button to the Rabbit Room Apologetics channel. All right? And if you haven't done so, think about liking and sharing this video with a friend. You know, it helps the channel out a great deal, and thank you. But you'll be surprised at what you can find. Also, remember that in the description, you'll find a link to the Substack article. You'll find a link to the podcast to listen to, as well as a link to a trial for Logos Bible software, the software I use every day. Maybe you'll find some use for it. I think it's the best one available. So if you have questions, leave me a question. I love comments. I answer them all. I try to give you the best answers I can. So think about that. Have a very blessed day. Live in the fullness that God intends for all of us. And as always, remember, God is good all the time.